Hello, my name is Earl Willis Jr. I'm from the Warren County Public Library, and today is February the 8th, 2017, and we're in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I'm going to interview Lora Gill. And I want to start off today, Laura, by asking you the first question. Where and when were you born?
I was born at Fort Knox, Kentucky on March 1st, 1969.
Okay. What were you doing before you entered the service?
I was a college student at the University of Kentucky, and I joined the Army on what was called the Delayed Entry Program, which allowed me to finish the spring semester before I went into basic training.
Okay. So we maybe kind of covered this a little bit, but in which branch of the military did you serve?
The United States Army.
Okay, United States Army. Is there any reason why you picked the Army over any other branches?
Well, my father is an Army veteran of 28 years, and when I was in high school, there were a couple people that came into my German class, and they were from the Defense Language Institute. They were representatives from that school, and they were in the Army, and they came in and shared all about DLI and how you could go there and learn a language. And so that always sort of stuck in the back of my mind that if I ever did go into the armed forces, that I would want to try to go to DLI. So then during the time when I was thinking about it, and I talked to the recruiter and asked him if DLI was a possibility, and I had to take a couple tests to see if I qualified to be able to go there. And so I did that, and anyway, I chose Army because of my father and because of those gentlemen that came into my language class when I was in high school.
Okay, that's reasonable, because you think about your father, and you probably know what to expect, and maybe you kind of saw him in his uniform and things like that.
Yes.
And you were born in Fort Knox, so you
Yes.
already kind of were indoctrinated. You knew about the Army lifestyle, right?
Yes, and I had been to Germany twice during my father's service time, and so I had an idea of kind of what to expect. So yeah, it was a very big reason for for me choosing the Army.
Okay. What happened when you departed from training camp and during the early days? Do you remember when you left for basic training?
Yes, actually, my husband, not at the time, we were dating, during that spring semester of college, waiting to go into basic training, my husband and I got married, and he joined the Army as well. And so we ended up staying together the whole time that we were in the Army, and I spent 4 days at my parents' house and 3 days at my husband's house, and then left for basic training. So, as a newlywed.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of different, or maybe it's not different. But
It was different. It was different.
Do you remember any of your instructors? Do you remember in the basic training or the boot camp? Does that stick in your mind, or?
Well, we went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, in the middle of summer for basic training, and it was just very hot. I hadn't experienced a very southern summer like that before. It was basic training was a big eye-opener for me, because I was only 19 when I went into the military, and didn't know a lot of things in terms of skills that I would need to become a soldier. So physical training was a really big deal for me. And I remember sitting probably 4:30 in the morning and it's still dark outside, and I was on the ground and had my first experience with red fire ants before PE or before PT. So that's sort of a memory that I have of basic training. Then I had to learn how to shoot and throw a grenade and do all of the other things that you need to learn to become a soldier. So that was, I don't know, I guess, the highlight.
Are those things you've done before, or are you exposed to those, or?
No, I had never shot a weapon before, never obviously threw a grenade. That was interesting because I didn't really throw very well at the time. But later on, with lots of practice, I was able to have a good arm, thanks to my husband and practicing baseball throwing. But no, I had never been exposed to.
Okay, you said the physical training. Have you done any physical training before, like in high school or?
No, I did a little bit of running. One of the things I'm thankful for my experience in the Army is that I became really interested in running, and that is still a huge part of my life. Staying physically fit is very important to me. It's something that I've continued to do over all of these years, and I think it's a great thing to be able to exercise and to be fit and stay healthy.
Yeah. Did you receive any special training, and if so, what? Can you go over some of your training and maybe where you went and?
Yeah. Okay, so after basic training, we ended up, both my husband and I, like I said, we were together. We went to the Defense Language Institute. I did end up being able to go. I was there for about a year, and I studied Korean, and was in a class with about 6 or 7 other members of the armed forces, some Navy, Marine, Air Force, and then it was an intensive language course for 6 to 8 hours a day, and we had to learn to read, write, speak, and read the language, and obviously we were tested every week, and so graduating from DLI was a huge accomplishment for me. I was very, very proud of that accomplishment. And then after DLI, we went to San Angelo, Texas for our actual MOS training. And my job title was 98 Charlie. I was an electronic warfare analyst. So spent 6 months in San Angelo learning how to do my actual job. And then after that, went to Fort Devens, Massachusetts for 3 months for some more training. And then at the end of that 3 months, we flew over to Korea, and we were stationed at Camp Humphreys. And we ended up staying there for 2 years during the time that Desert Storm started.
Okay, you said you took a specialized language training. What languages did you learn, or what language did you learn?
That was Korean.
Korean language, okay, so you specialize in Korean language.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why we ended up in Korea. For our specific job.
Okay. How did you adapt to military life? How did you, maybe you can tell us about riding back and forth with your family, or you missed home, or,
Yeah.
like that?
One of the fun things that both my husband and I did while we were over in Korea was we wrote lots of letters the whole time that we were in the military. But we also, this was back when there were cassettes, we had a special cassette recorder, and we would take turns just talking into the cassette. If we went out and did something, we would bring the cassette with us and talk to our families as we were going about doing our errands and things. So we did that on a regular basis. I haven't, I don't know, maybe 20 to 30 tapes that are all recordings of our talking back and forth between our family. So that was a real special thing that we did.
So you, instead of sending letters, you sent like cassettes to your family to listen to, right?
Yes, and we also wrote letters.
Okay.
We did that too.
Did you miss home? Were you homesick, or you just?
A little bit homesick, but it was fun because I was in a different part of the world. Like I said, my father was in the military, so I grew up kind of being traveling a lot, and so I liked the fact that I was on the other side of the world, in a different part from Germany, where I had grown up as a girl. And then we were able to do a whole lot of traveling around the West Coast when we were out in California. So I wasn't really homesick, a little bit, but the tapes and things were nice, and it was okay.
Yeah. So from your father's experience and your you kind of knew what you were getting into, the traveling, and you knew experience. You just stayed in one place your whole entire life when you grew up as a child, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Where did you serve? So you said you served the most place that hit your mind is Korea. Can you talk about a little bit about what you thought and your things you saw, maybe your foods, and maybe how your language carried over to your?
Well, we were allowed to live off of the Army base when we were in Korea, and so we had to be able to communicate with our landlord and the taxi drivers when they would take us home from the base if we needed to take a taxi ride rather than walk. One of the neat things that was special about being over there was that we didn't have a car, and so every morning we had to walk a little over a mile into work and a mile back home, and it didn't matter what the weather was like. We didn't drink the water that was in our apartment, so we had these huge 5-gallon jugs that we would have to take every maybe 3-4 days. We would walk them to the base empty, and they had a water station on base, and we would fill them up, and then we would take the taxi back home. So we would talk to the taxi driver sometimes. And then we would sometimes walk through the town and go in some of the shops and talk to them. Took a couple trips, well, not a couple, took several bus trips to Seoul, to Osan Air Force Base, and went to some of the little towns and got to experience being outside of the military base. So that was really interesting. The food was different. The people obviously are different. Culturally, it was very different, but it was a tremendous experience, and one that holds very special memories to me.
Okay. How would can you explain maybe where you grew up to how the culture? Can you explain maybe to us about the different culture differences, maybe?
Well, in the Korean language, one of the things that's a little bit, well, it is a lot different from speaking English, is that there are two forms of language that you speak to people that you know, to people who are younger than yourself, and then to people who are older. So I've found that to be really an interesting concept idea, that the honor of the elderly is just taken a little bit differently in terms of language. So that was one of my biggest things. And the food was very different from what I had experienced here in the States, and when I grew up over in Germany. So that was kind of fun to sort of try new things. And some things I didn't want to try. Dried squid and some of the cuisine was not what I really wanted to experience. But
and what year was this when you were in Korea? What year is this when you were in Korea?
I was in Korea 1990 to 1992.
Okay. And do you remember when? So you're a Gulf War era veteran. So do you remember when the Gulf War started taking place? Do you remember where you were at or anything on the news, or do you remember that when you?
Well, I think the Gulf War started towards the last year, or towards the end of our first year, I think, when we were in Korea. And we ended up extending another year to stay in Korea instead of coming back to the States because of all of the transition of troops and things during that time. So we chose to stay in Korea and work on our live mission, which we had for our job. So it was an important job and one that mattered.
Yeah. Did you know anybody that went to Saudi Arabia?
I do. I had a very dear friend who went over to Desert Storm, and she was in the Army.
Okay. Can you talk about maybe some of your friends or your comrades that you've made?
Yeah, we have. We made several friends while we were in Korea. We've kind of kept in touch with maybe 3 or 4 of them through Facebook and social media. Just kind of keep up with what's going on in their world. But nobody that we actively see.
Okay.
Just kind of keep up.
So since you were married, your husband was probably your friend you hung out with the most, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you had a different relationship. If you were single, you might have had like more girlfriends or.
Yeah,
stuff. Okay.
probably.
Yeah.
My husband and I had a lot of fun hanging out together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've already talked about this, but do you remember like Christmas time or different holidays? How do you keep in touch with your family back home? Do you remember anything?
Well, we like I said, we did our tapes and our letters, and then every now and then we would be able to talk on the telephone. So that was a real treat to be able to do that. But we didn't really talk on the phone a whole lot. It was mostly through our tapes, and so it was having the tapes felt very personal.
Yeah.
And you were able to explain a lot more and kind of be in each other's world a little bit more than what you would be in a phone conversation.
Yeah, because this is before the days of instant messages and text messages and email.
Yeah.
So someone hearing your voice was pretty personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you do for recreation when you were off duty? What were some of the things you did for fun?
Well, like I told you, staying fit was important to us. And so one of the things that my husband and I both did the whole time that we were in the military is run. So we did that a lot for recreation. And we would run sometimes 5 to 6 miles every day after we got off work. In Korea, we'd get off about 5 o'clock and walk home and put our running clothes on and run onto the base, and we would run the perimeter and then run back home. So in Korea, running was big. We would go to the movie theater sometimes on the base and maybe go have something to eat, and write our letters and do our tapes and travel around when we could.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking about running now. I guess one of the things I forgot about, can you tell us maybe what the weather in Korea?
We had all seasons. In the summertime, it would be it would be in the 80s, 90s. In our little apartment, we didn't have air conditioning, so no breeze kind of went through our apartment, even with the windows open. So we experienced very hot summers with the fan blowing, very stagnant air in our little apartment. And then in the wintertime, it would get very, very cold. So we'd have to bundle up real warm when we would walk to work.
Would be plenty of snow. It snows
Yes,
a lot in Korea,
it
right?
snowed. Yeah, we would get snow. And we would still be out there running.
Is there humidity? Compare the humidity to here, like Kentucky to Korea. Is there humidity?
A little bit. I mean, depending on where you're at. I mean, it seemed kind of the same, I think, as here.
Kind of a muggy.
Yeah.
So, what year did your service end, and you remember your last day and going, like leaving? Of course, you flew back home. So,
right.
Can you remember?
I remember. We were in Korea right up until it was time for us to ETS, and we flew to San Francisco. And so we had a couple days to kind of hang out while we were checking out and ETSing out of the Army. So that was a really fun, but kind of scary time, because we were moving on and closing one chapter and getting ready to open up another one.
So, were you glad, or were you happy, or?
Yeah, I think we were both ready to get back to the States, and happy that we had served our 4 years in the military, and then of course you have to serve 4 years of inactive duty after you get out. So we still had that part of our military connection, but yes, we were ready to continue with our college education and start our family. And
so it says, how were you received by your family in your community? How did your dad feel about you being in the Army?
I think I think it touched him. At first, I think he was very surprised, because I don't think he thought that I would. That was something that I would want to do. But after it was all over, and with having shared my experience with him, and talking about things and all our stories, I think it made him feel good that I was able to serve my country. So it's a neat connection that we have, and I'm very thankful for my military experience, because it has helped me understand my father more, and it's just a neat connection now that I have with him.
Okay. Do you remember any, how your community, how you received by your community, or just kind of private, you and your family?
No, it was just private. It was
right.
private, because we ended up coming back to Lexington, and our parents were in different locations. So, but it was a happy reunion. We had to, spend time with each of them in different places, and then come back and find a place to stay and go back to school.
Okay, we've touched on this previously, but maybe we can touch on it again. Do you keep in contact with anybody you were in the Army with?
Yes.
Okay, you do?
On Facebook.
On
yes,
Facebook?
on
Okay.
Facebook, and other
Okay.
social ways.
Yeah. So what have you been what have you done to separate from, okay, so you went from being in Korea, so you went back to Kentucky, correct? Right. So what did you do after you got out of the Army?
I went back to college, went to the University of Kentucky, and ended up getting my master's in library and information science. And then at that point, we started our family. So I was a stay-at-home mom for a while. I worked in a bookstore before our family. So that was my love of books, and the reason that I got my master's in library science. Then after raising our kiddos. I ended up getting a job here at the Warren County Public Library, and have also pursued an art, kind of an art avenue. Do a lot of artwork on my own, and have a love of art, and teaching art to kids and adults, and just sharing that part of me with others.
So how would you say the life lessons you've learned from military service? So what have you most learned from military service?
I think one of the biggest things I learned from my time in the military is that it takes a lot of strength and courage to face things that are unknown to you, and things that you don't know how to do. I remember one of my greatest, happiest moments in the military was when they dropped a bunch of us off at the top of this hill with nothing, and except a compass, and said, you have to find your way back to this certain spot on your own. Good luck. And it was such an accomplishment for me, because I had to learn how to read a compass, how to figure out how to kind of survive in a place that I didn't know really. So that was really a big thing for me, because it was scary.
How does it, your military experience, how does it affect the way you look at like military war today? Does it, you think you look at it different than someone that hasn't been in the military?
Absolutely. Because I know what it's like to be in the military, you just have a different kind of understanding for people who serve in wartime or not wartime.
Yeah. What message would you like to leave for future generations who view this interview? What's the most, if you can talk about 2 or 3 points or 1 point, what would you, anybody watches this interview, what would you really want people to?
Well, for one, that serving your country is a beautiful thing. In wartime or not wartime, it's something that matters. It's important, and if you do decide to join the military, it can be a life-changing experience. Attitude is extremely important. Having strength and courage is important. Obviously, with life, you have things that happen, bad things, good things, and an understanding that that those things are out there. And when we give a part of ourselves in good times and bad times, we can make a difference. We can make a difference with our attitude and our hope.
Yeah. So I guess you're trying to sum it up now. See if you tell me if you're right. You went from living in Kentucky, so the military helped you travel around the world and learn different languages and different experiences. Would you say that was right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had lots of good experiences. One of the fun experiences that happened when my husband and I were in Korea, I told you we were into running. We were training for a race, and there was an officer that we worked with that found out about the Honolulu Marathon and asked my husband and I if we would be interested in doing that. And so we said that sure, we would try it. We would try to train. So we were training for a marathon in the middle of winter, 20 degrees and below. I'm running in the snow and the cold, and ended up flying to Hawaii. Got stuck in Guam on the way there. We had to spend the night in Guam, and got to Hawaii, and we all represented the 3rd MI Battalion in this race. I think there were maybe 4 or 5 of us, and it was considered a TDY. And so we all ran this marathon, and it was 82 something, 83 degrees by 10 or 11 by the time we finished, and it was an amazing challenge. Ended up getting a little bit of heat exhaustion and had to walk a little bit, but my husband and I both finished holding hands and crossing the finish line. So that's kind of a happy memory that we have from our experience.
So do you think that it would be true to say if your military experience definitely helped you make it through the marathon correctly?
Oh yeah, just mentally, and it was a fun adventure that we had.
In closing, is there anything you would like for us to discuss, or haven't been discussed, or you think that you'd like to add to this interview?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Just for anybody out there who's a veteran, thank you for your service, and for those who are not veterans, thank a veteran.
Okay. Thank you for your service, and I appreciate your interview. Thank you.
Thank you.